At my son's wedding, they thought it was funny to swap out my seat for a garbage can. Lighten up, it is just a joke. Do not be so dramatic, my daughter-in-law said. The guests burst out laughing, but their smiles froze when I pulled out the DNA results for my grandson. Silence fell over the room. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. Looking back, I should have realized something was off the moment I walked into the hall and checked the seating chart. My finger ran down the neat rows of names written in fancy script: Castellano, Dunlap, Pendergrass. But nowhere did I find mine. No Russell Thatcher listed at all. "Excuse me," I said to the young woman holding a clipboard, her polished smile rehearsed from countless events. "I cannot seem to find my table number." "I am Russell Thatcher, the groom's father." Her smile flickered for a moment before she answered, "Let me check with the bride about that." She hurried off, leaving me standing alone in my best navy suit, the one I had carefully chosen for Gerald's big day. I had spent 4 months planning, getting the alterations right, and trying to look the part of a proud father. And now, for the first time, I felt like an outsider at my own son's wedding. When she came back, she was not alone. Vera herself trailed behind her, glowing in a gown of white that shimmered under the lights. Her blonde hair was pinned in some elaborate style that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She was only 27, with that untouchable confidence of someone who had never been told no. "Oh, Russell," Vera said, her voice coated in sugar, though her sharp green eyes told a different story. "I am so sorry for the mix-up. We had to shuffle the seating chart at the last minute." "Of course," I said. "Where would you like me to sit?" Her smile stretched wider, and for a moment I thought I saw something cruel in her expression. "Follow me. I will take you to your special spot." Despite the confusion, my chest swelled. Maybe she had prepared something thoughtful. Maybe, after all our tension over the last year, she was trying to build a bridge on her wedding day. I followed her past the decorated tables lined with white roses and gold trim, past the polished dance floor where I imagined my son would soon take his first dance as a married man. We moved beyond the family tables where her relatives sat comfortably. Still, we kept walking. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice carrying a hint of unease. "Just a little farther," Vera answered, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. "I wanted you to have the perfect view." We rounded a corner and she stopped. "Here we are. Here we are." I froze. Against the wall near the coat check, partially hidden behind a giant potted plant, was a metal folding chair. Beside it stood a tall silver trash can. "I do not understand," I whispered. Vera laughed lightly, as if she had just told the most clever joke. "That is your seat, right by the garbage can. Perfect, is it not?" My stomach sank. This cannot be serious. "Oh, but it is," she said, her sweetness now edged with venom. "Do not be so dramatic, Russell. It is just a joke, and honestly, it suits you." Heat rushed to my face, but underneath the shame came a darker realization. This was not a prank or an accident. This was deliberate. This was a message. "Vera, please," I said quietly. "It is your wedding day. Surely we can—" "We can what?" She cut me off, her mask slipping completely. "Pretend that you belong here. Pretend that you are wanted," and her words hit me like blows. I steadied myself by gripping the back of the chair. "Does Gerald know about this?" I asked. Her smile returned, smug and victorious. "Of course. He thinks it is hilarious. We both do. You should see your face right now." As if on cue, Gerald appeared from around the corner, striking in his black tuxedo. My heart lifted for a second. Surely he would stop this nonsense. "Dad, did Vera show you your seat?" His grin was wide, genuine. For a split second, I believed he would defend me. My own son, the boy I had raised alone after his mother walked out, the child I had supported with 2 jobs just to get him through college, was laughing at my humiliation. "Gerald," I said carefully, "you cannot possibly think this is acceptable." He shrugged, pulling Vera close. "Come on, Dad. Do not be so uptight. It is just a joke. You are always too serious." Behind them, I noticed wedding guests turning to watch, whispering, pointing. Some chuckled openly. My cheeks burned as the spectacle grew. "See?" Vera announced, her voice rising so everyone could hear. "He cannot even take a joke. No wonder Gerald wanted distance from all that negativity." The crowd laughed again, and I stood there, exposed and humiliated in a way I had not felt since I was a kid. These people, Gerald's friends, Vera's family, even some of his coworkers, They were all standing there, watching me get torn down, and they were enjoying every second of it. I looked at my son one last time, searching his face for even a trace of the boy I had raised with so much care. But all I saw was him gazing at Vera like she was the only person on earth. The devotion in his eyes told me everything. I had already lost him. "Well," I said, keeping my voice steadier than I actually felt, "thank you both for showing me exactly where I stand." I lowered myself onto that folding chair with as much dignity as I could manage. The cold metal pressed against my back, the garbage can beside me gave off the sour smell of leftover food from cocktail hour, but I stayed put. I refused to give them the satisfaction of watching me flee. As the crowd dispersed, still whispering and laughing about the father-in-law who couldn't take a joke, I sat there in my navy suit, hidden behind a potted plant, watching my son's wedding play out from the shadows. Every burst of laughter from the reception hall stabbed into me like a knife. But underneath that pain, something else was forming, a quiet, steady anger. And beneath that anger, an old suspicion began to stir again, one I had tried to push aside for months. Something about Vera's pregnancy timeline had never added up. If they wanted to treat me like trash, maybe it was time I stopped ignoring the cracks in their story. That folding chair became my prison for almost 4 hours. I sat there listening to the music, the toasts, the clinking of glasses, all of it a celebration I was no real part of. And with each passing minute, more uncomfortable memories started resurfacing. It had been exactly 10 months earlier when Gerald first brought Vera home. I remember the day clearly. It was my birthday. I had been hoping for a simple dinner with my son. Instead, he showed up with this beautiful young woman who immediately took over the evening. She shifted the conversation, rearranged the seating, even made suggestions about the food I had cooked. "Gerald has told me so much about you," she said that night, smiling politely but never quite meeting my eyes. "I hope we can be close." 7 weeks later, they were engaged. 4 months after that, she was pregnant. The speed of it all had worried me at the time, but Gerald was so thrilled, so completely wrapped up in her, that I swallowed my doubts. Young love, I told myself. Sometimes it just moves fast. But sitting at that wedding beside a garbage can, my doubts came rushing back in full force. Owen, the baby, had been born only 7 months after Gerald introduced Vera to me. 7 months. They insisted he had come early, but the boy weighed 8 pounds 6 ounces, hardly what you would expect from a premature birth. When I gently questioned it, Vera had snapped at me. "Are you calling me a liar about my own pregnancy?" she had hissed. "Some babies grow quicker than others. Maybe if you had raised more children, you would understand." That cut deep. I had wanted more kids, but Gerald's mother left when he was only 4 years old, and I never found anyone else I trusted enough to bring into our lives. Vera knew exactly how to dig into those wounds, and she used it. From my corner of the reception, I watched Owen being passed around among Vera's family. He was a striking baby, with thick dark hair and serious brown eyes that seemed to study everything. He was 9 months old now, pulling himself up on chairs, babbling in that sweet way babies do. But those eyes, they bothered me. Not because they were strange, but because they looked nothing like Gerald's bright blue ones, and they were nothing like Vera's green eyes either. In fact, scanning the room, I did not see anyone else with Owen's deep brown eyes and sharp features. I tried to shake it off. Genetics are unpredictable. Babies do not always resemble their parents, especially early on. Maybe I was letting my hurt cloud my judgment. But then I remembered another moment, just 4 months earlier. I had dropped by Gerald and Vera's apartment without warning. A piece of mail for them had been sent to my house by mistake, and I thought it would be a nice excuse to see Owen. When I knocked, I heard Vera inside, her voice raised in what sounded like a heated argument. "You need to stay away," she was saying. "I told you 100 times, it's over. I am married now, and that is final." When she opened the door, her face was flushed, her usual control shaken. "Russell, what are you doing here?" "Just dropping off some mail," I said, holding out the envelope. "Everything all right? You sound upset." "Oh, just a telemarketer," she said quickly, though her hands trembled as she took the letter. "You know how persistent they can be." I asked if I could see Owen for a few minutes, but she blocked the doorway. "Actually, this is not a good time. He is napping, and I have important calls to make." The door clicked shut before I could protest. Looking back, I am certain that call had nothing to do with the telemarketer. The tone, the words, it sounded personal, intimate even, like she was cutting ties with someone from her past, or maybe her present. Another memory surfaced from the day Owen was born. I had been at the hospital holding him for the first time, overwhelmed with pride. A nurse leaned over and said casually, "He has such distinctive features for a newborn. Usually takes a few months for their real look to settle in, but this little guy already knows who he is." At the time, I smiled, taking it as a compliment. But now, sitting at that wedding behind a potted plant, the comment carried a whole new weight. I started to wonder if that nurse had been hinting at something more than I realized. By the time those thoughts hit me, the reception was winding down. The cake had been sliced, the bouquet tossed, the first dance already over. Gerald looked the happiest I had ever seen him, spinning Vera across the dance floor as the crowd clapped and cheered them on. They looked like a couple in love, or at least, Gerald did. But I knew how love could blind a man. I had learned that the hard way from Gerald's mother. She had been sweet and attentive right up until the day she cleared out our joint account and ran off with her boss. As I finally stood from that freezing chair, my legs stiff from hours of sitting in humiliation, I made up my mind. If Vera thought she could treat me like garbage, if she wanted my son to see me as nothing more than dead weight, then maybe it was time I stopped playing the role of a man with something to protect. I would start acting like someone with nothing left to lose. I walked over to where Owen was sleeping peacefully in his carrier, tucked among the gifts and flowers. His little face was calm in sleep, but even like that, those brown eyes and sharp features seemed to speak louder than words. They told a story that had nothing to do with my blue-eyed, round-faced boy. "Beautiful kid," I said, just loud enough for Vera to hear across the room. "He's going to break hearts when he gets older." Her head snapped in my direction, eyes narrowing. For just an instant, I saw fear flash in her face before she smoothed it over with a smile. That was interesting. I reached down, brushing my finger against Owen's tiny hand. Such a sweet, innocent child, caught in whatever mess the adults around him had built. He deserved better than lies. And so did Gerald. As I walked toward the exit, I felt strangely lighter. Not because the humiliation had gone away. It hadn't. I was still the man who got parked beside a garbage can at his own son's wedding. But now I had a purpose, something to channel all that anger and shame into. I was going to uncover the truth about Owen. Revenge? Maybe that was part of it. I would not deny how much I wanted to wipe that smug grin off Vera's face. But more than that, my son deserved to know who he had really married and what kind of life he was building. If I was right, this wedding was built on lies. If I was wrong, at least I would know the truth and maybe, just maybe, find a way to make peace with a family that clearly wanted no place for me. Either way, I was finished being the father who sat quietly beside the trash. I was still his father. And even if Gerald didn't want protecting, I wasn't going to stop. A week later, I sat at my kitchen table with the yellow pages spread out, my hands trembling slightly as I flipped to the section for private investigators. The whole idea felt foreign, almost ridiculous. I shut the book twice, telling myself it was too extreme. But every time I hesitated, I pictured that folding chair, that garbage can, and Gerald's laughter at my humiliation. The first investigator I called seemed to deal mostly with cheating husbands and phony insurance claims. The second hung up the moment I mentioned my daughter-in-law. But the third call brought me to Helen Kowalczyk, a retired police detective now running her own small agency. She understood right away. Family cases can be tricky, she told me over the phone. But if there are doubts about paternity, especially with a child involved, those answers matter. Can you come in tomorrow? Her office was in a modest strip mall, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a tax service. She was a compact woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and gray hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She listened without a hint of judgment as I laid out everything. The rushed engagement, the pregnancy timeline, the birth, my nagging doubts. She took careful notes in neat handwriting. "The timeline doesn't make sense," she said finally. 7 months from meeting to birth. They claimed the baby came early, but the wait was full term. And you say the boy doesn't resemble either parent? Not at all, But I know genetics can surprise you. I could be wrong. That's what DNA is for, Helen said with a faint smile. But let me be clear. If your suspicions are right, this will tear apart your son's marriage, and it may destroy your relationship with him permanently. Are you ready for that? I thought of Gerald at the wedding, looking at me like I was nothing. That bond is already broken. At least this way, if I'm right, he will know the truth. And if I'm wrong, then I'll know I was wrong, and maybe I can accept it. She nodded. Fair enough. To run a DNA test, I'll need samples from your son and from the child. The child's is usually simple, a pacifier, bottle, anything he's used. Your son's might be harder. My stomach tightened. I barely see Owen anymore. Vera makes sure of that. And Gerald. I trailed off, realizing how completely I had been cut out of their lives. Let me do some background work first, Helen offered. I'll look into Vera's past. Sometimes the truth shows up in places people never expect. The next week passed in a blur. Outwardly, I went through the motions, my 11-year job at the library, buying groceries, taking my evening walks through the neighborhood. But inside, I was elsewhere, waiting. The call came on Wednesday evening while I was heating up leftover soup. Russell, it's Helen. I found something on Vera's past. Can you come in tomorrow? I barely slept, my mind spinning with possibilities. The next afternoon, I walked into her office and saw a thick manila folder on her desk. Vera wasn't fully honest, Helen said straight away. She told your son she lived in Boise, worked as a marketing coordinator for a firm that closed. True, but not the whole truth. She slid a photo across the table. Vera at a casual outdoor party, her arm around a tall, dark-haired man with sharp features and deep brown eyes. The resemblance to Owen hit me like a punch. His name is Craig Holbrook, Helen explained. They dated almost 2 years, lived together for the last 8 months. Then she left town suddenly. When? I asked, already knowing. About 7 weeks before she met your son. Broke her lease, claimed she had a job offer. The timeline was crushing. 7 months later, Owen was born. Helen's voice softened. I spoke with Craig. He believes Vera was pregnant when she disappeared. My stomach twisted. He knows about Owen? Not by name, but he knows she carried his child. He's been trying to find her for almost 2 years. I studied the photo again. The same jawline, the same crooked smile, a stranger in Boise searching for his son while Gerald raised him unknowingly. What kind of person does this? I muttered. Someone skilled at starting over, Helen said firmly. Craig's a stable man with a good job, but Vera decided she could do better. The truth snapped together with painful clarity. She'd left Boise pregnant, latched onto my trusting son, and convinced him the baby was his. I need that DNA test, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in weeks. Are you certain? Proof will shatter their marriage and maybe your bond with Gerald. Our bond's already gone. At least he'll know the truth. And if I'm wrong, I'll accept it. Helen nodded. Then we must proceed carefully. If Vera senses anything, she could vanish with Owen. She's done it before. That afternoon, I drove past Gerald and Vera's apartment with a stuffed elephant in the seat beside me, hoping for a chance to see Owen. But fear rooted me in the car, fear of what the test might reveal or not reveal. I was still frozen when Vera appeared, pushing Owen in his stroller, chatting easily with a neighbor, laughing like any young mother. But now I knew better. I knew about Craig Holbrook, about Boise, about the lies. Watching her smile as Owen babbled, I felt a cold determination replace my shame. She was skilled at deception, but she'd made one mistake. She thought she could discard me. I started the car, already planning. Helen was right. We needed caution, but caution didn't mean standing still. The chance came faster than I expected. Sunday afternoon, Gerald called. Dad, want to come for dinner tonight? Vera thought it would be nice. I gripped the phone tighter, suspicion flooding me. After the wedding humiliation, the idea that Vera wanted me at her table felt unreal. Are you sure that's what she wants? I asked Gerald. Of course. We've been talking and we feel bad about the wedding. The whole seating thing was supposed to be funny, but maybe it went too far. Maybe too far. Not cruel, not humiliating. Just maybe. But I swallowed my pride. This might be my only chance to get the DNA sample Helen needed. That's thoughtful, I said. What time? 6 o'clock. And Dad, could you bring those herb dinner rolls you used to make? The request was so normal, so much like the boy I'd raised, that for a moment I forgot about DNA tests and Craig Holbrook. Of course, son. I'll make them fresh. I spent the afternoon in my kitchen, kneading dough, trying to steady myself. Those rolls had been Gerald's favorite at birthdays and holidays. They took patience and care, my way of showing love when words weren't enough. As I shaped the rounds, I thought of Helen's instructions. Anything the baby's put in his mouth, pacifier, toy, spoon, just slip it into a plastic bag when no one's looking. It sounded simple, but the thought of deceiving my own family made my stomach twist. At 6 sharp, I stood at Gerald's door, basket of warm rolls in hand. Vera opened it with a polished smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. Russell, come in. Something smells amazing. The apartment was spotless, decorated in cool whites and grays, expensive but cold. Owen sat in his high chair, pounding a blue spoon against the tray while Vera fussed over dinner. Can I help? I asked. Keep Owen busy. He's been fussy all day. I approached my supposed grandson, struck again by how little he looked like either Gerald or Vera. Up close, the resemblance to Craig Holbrook was undeniable. Owen looked at me with those serious brown eyes and gave a drooly grin. My heart clenched. Hi there, buddy, I whispered, letting him grab my finger with surprising strength. He likes you, Gerald said from the doorway, grinning. Look at that smile. For a moment, I almost lost my nerve. Gerald was so happy. Owen was clearly loved. Did truth matter more than this peace? But then I thought of Craig, searching in Boise, like not knowing his son existed. I thought of Gerald pouring himself into a lie, and I thought of myself, humiliated at that wedding because I threatened Vera's fiction. The truth mattered. Dinner was surprisingly easy. Vera asked about my work, praised the roles, even joined in Gerald's stories about their honeymoon. She spoke of Owen's first birthday, a picnic in the park, family-friendly. That sounds wonderful, I said, watching Owen snatch the spoon Vera offered and shove it in his mouth. Perfect. Mind if I feed him? I asked. Vera hesitated, then handed me the spoon. Sure, he's actually getting good at it. For 15 minutes, I fed Owen while talking with Gerald. The baby smeared food everywhere, coating the spoon in drool and carrots. When he pushed the food away, I stood to wash it. I'll get that, Vera said quickly. It's fine, I replied, turning toward the sink. In one smooth motion, I rinsed the spoon, slipped it into the plastic bag inside my purse, and replaced it with a clean one from the dish rack. The swap took barely a minute. The rest of the evening blurred by photos of their honeymoon, holiday plans, Owen falling asleep against my shoulder. But all I could feel was the weight of that plastic bag in my purse. When I finally left, Vera walked me to the door while Gerald tidied the kitchen. Thank you for coming, she said. Her voice almost sounded sincere. I know things have been rough, but we're family. I want Owen to know his grandfather. His grandfather. The words hit like a punch. I kept my face steady. I want that too. She studied my face for a moment, and I worried she could somehow see through me, sense the secret I carried. Then she smiled again, gave me a stiff hug, and said, Drive safe, and thank you for the rolls. Gerald's been talking about them for weeks. The next morning, I met Helen at a lab across town. A cheerful technician named Blanche explained the process while carefully labeling the bag with Owen's spoon. We'll compare this with the alleged father's sample. Results take 5 to 7 business days, she said. And those results? I asked. If there's a biological match, we'll know with 99.9% accuracy. If not, we'll know that too. 5 to 7 business days, both forever and no time at all. Helen must have read the doubt on my face. Second thoughts? I thought of Owen's smile, Gerald's happiness, Vera's hug at the door. Then I pictured Craig Holbrook still searching for the child she had hidden from him. No, I said firmly. I need to know. The wait was agony. Every phone call made me jump. I went through my routine, but my mind was nowhere near the library or the grocery store. Finally, Thursday morning, Helen called. Russell, the results are in. Can you come to my office? My hands shook on the drive. Helen sat behind her desk, a manila envelope in front of her. Before I show you, know this. You did the right thing seeking the truth. I nodded, unable to speak. She opened the envelope, pulled out a single page. The test shows no biological relationship. Owen is not Gerald's child. Even though I expected it, hearing the words crushed me. I collapsed into a chair, my legs too weak to stand. You're absolutely certain? 99.9%. The lab ran it twice. Helen's tone was firm, but gentle. I'm sorry, Russell. The strange thing was, I felt relief. Not joy, not victory. Relief. For months, I doubted my own sanity. Now I knew. What happens now? I asked. That's your choice. You could confront Vera privately, tell Gerald directly, or, given how they've treated you, reveal it publicly at a time and place of your choosing. I thought of that folding chair, the garbage can, the laughter of strangers at my expense. I thought of Craig Holbrook, who had the right to know, and Gerald, living a lie bound to collapse. I need time, I said, but even as I spoke, I was already planning. Vera had picked the stage for my humiliation. Maybe it was time I chose the stage for hers. For 3 weeks, I carried the truth like a stone in my chest. Every word with Gerald felt fake, every smile forced. The chance I was waiting for came in the form of another invitation, this one directly from Vera. Her voice was bright when she called. Russell, I have a wonderful idea. What about a little celebration for Owen's first steps? He's so close to walking, and I'd love both families together when it happens. Both families. My grip tightened on the phone. She continued, My parents are coming down from Tacoma, my sister too. Perfect timing for everyone to meet. The irony was sharp. She wanted to showcase her perfect family with me playing the doting grandfather. She had no idea she'd just given me the perfect stage. That sounds lovely, I said evenly. What can I bring? Just yourself. Maybe those dinner rolls again? My parents loved hearing about them. Saturday came gray and damp, matching my mood. In my bag was a manila envelope with the DNA results, Helen's full report, the photo of Craig Holbrook, and his contact information. The apartment was already crowded when I arrived. Vera's parents, Philip and Dorothy Pemberton, were polished people in their 60s, the kind of couple that wore wealth like a second skin. Dorothy's cashmere sweater alone probably cost more than I spend on groceries in a month, and Philip's watch caught the light every time he lifted his hand. Their daughter Eileen was like a younger copy of Vera, blonde, beautiful, self-assured. She was holding Owen, cooing at him while he tugged playfully at her earrings. You must be Russell, Dorothy said, giving me a smile that felt polite but appraising. We've heard so much about you. I wondered what stories they'd heard, considering Vera had sat me beside a trash can at the wedding. Still, I forced a pleasant smile. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for including me. Of course, Philip replied, though his handshake was firm and quick, more business than family. Family is family. If only he knew how ironic those words were about to become. For the first hour, I played my part. I laughed politely at Dorothy's tales of their luxury cruise, nodded at Philip's quips about retirement, and listened to Eileen's complaints about her marketing job. All the while, my eyes kept drifting back to Owen. He was on the edge of something big, pulling himself up, wobbling along the furniture, his face lit with determination. Gerald was the picture of the proud father, recording every move with his phone, cheering on the child he thought was his. The sight of it twisted something inside me, but I pushed it down. This moment had to come. Should we move to the living room? Vera suggested after lunch. More space for Owen to practice. We gathered there, everyone sitting on the carpet in a wide circle while Owen clung to the coffee table. The mood was warm, charged with expectation. Come on, buddy, Gerald said, crouching 6 feet away with his arms outstretched. Come to Daddy. The word Daddy hit me like a physical blow, but I stayed calm. Owen looked around at all the eager faces, then let go. He wobbled, swayed, took one shaky step, then another. He's doing it, Eileen squealed, clapping. The room erupted with cheers as Owen stumbled forward, 5 tiny steps before plopping down on his bottom, wide-eyed and proud. Gerald scooped him up, spinning him around while Owen giggled. His first steps, Vera said, tears sparkling. I wish we could freeze this moment forever. Actually, I said, rising slowly, this feels like the right time to share something with all of you. The room went quiet. Every eye turned to me. Vera's smile faltered, a flicker of unease passing through her face. What is it, Dad? Gerald asked, Owen still in his arms. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope, my hands steady. I've learned something recently, something the entire family needs to hear, especially you, Gerald. Vera's face drained of color. Russell, what are you doing? Telling the truth, I said flatly, something I should have done weeks ago. I unfolded the DNA results, holding up the page with the lab's letterhead so no one could mistake what it was. 3 weeks ago, I had a DNA test performed on Owen. The silence was suffocating. Gerald's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that looked a lot like dawning comprehension. Dad, why would you? Because I suspected what these results now prove, I cut in. Owen is not your biological son. The reaction was instant. Dorothy gasped. Philip muttered under his breath. Eileen stared, stunned. But it was Vera I kept my eyes on. Her face crumpled, then hardened, then broke again as she realized her careful world was collapsing. That's impossible, she said, but her voice cracked. How dare you? The test shows zero biological relationship between Gerald and Owen, I said, cutting her off, which led me to dig deeper. I pulled out the photograph of Craig Holbrook and handed it to Gerald. His face went white as he stared at it, then looked at Owen, then back at the photo. Who is this? He whispered. His name is Craig Holbrook, a software engineer from Boise. He's been searching for Vera and his son for 2 years. Vera's voice returned, sharp and furious, the voice of someone trapped. You had no right, spying on my family, interfering in my marriage? Your marriage? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. A marriage built on lies? A family you created by deceiving my son about a child that isn't his? Stop, Gerald said quietly, still staring at the photo. Just, everybody stop. The room fell still again. Owen, unsettled by the tension, whimpered in Gerald's arms. My son looked down at him, studied his face, the dark eyes, the sharp jaw, features that belonged to someone else's bloodline. How long have you known? Gerald asked Vera, his voice raw. She opened her mouth, shut it, opened it again. Gerald, I can explain. How long? Gerald asked quietly. Vera's defiance crumbled. Her shoulders sagged and she whispered, Since before I met you, like I was already pregnant when I left Boise. Craig wanted to marry me, but I couldn't picture myself stuck in that life forever. Then I met you. You were successful, kind, and when you fell in love with me, I let you believe the baby was yours. Gerald's voice was flat, hollow. You were happy to let me believe that? You were so thrilled, Vera pleaded. You always said being a father was your dream, that Owen was the best thing that ever happened to you. I couldn't take that away. So you lied, Gerald said. His gaze dropped to Owen, reaching for his face with tiny hands. Does Craig know? Does he know he has a son? Vera said nothing. I answered for her. He suspected. My investigator spoke with him. He's been searching for you both. That set the room off. Dorothy demanded answers. Philip asked about legal fallout. Eileen just stared at her sister like she didn't recognize her. Through it all, Gerald sat in silence, holding Owen, staring into the wreckage of his life. Finally, he looked at me. You could have told me privately. Why do this here? I thought about that folding chair, the garbage can, the whispers and laughter at my humiliation. But when I spoke, my voice stayed even. Because she's done this before, Gerald. She's skilled at twisting things, making people believe whatever works for her. I wanted witnesses. I wanted the truth undeniable. He nodded slowly, then handed Owen into my arms. I need some air. Gerald walked out onto the balcony. Vera spun toward me, her beautiful face contorted with fury and panic. You've destroyed everything. Are you happy now? You ruined my marriage, my family. No, I said, holding Owen against my shoulder as he began to cry. You destroyed it the moment you built it on lies. All I did was expose the truth. I looked around the room at Vera's family, shaken, confused, blindsided, and I didn't feel triumph. What I felt was sadness. Sadness for the damage one person's selfishness could inflict. Yet beneath that sorrow came a strange lightness. For months I'd carried suspicion like a weight on my chest. Now the truth was in the open. 4 months later, I found myself back in my kitchen, kneading dough for dinner rolls. Not because anyone asked for them, but because the rhythm had become my meditation, a way to work through the storm that followed that day. The aftermath had been chaos, just as I'd expected. Vera's parents left that same evening, Dorothy barely speaking to her daughter. Eileen lingered, urging Vera to fix things somehow, but even she looked shaken by the scale of the betrayal. Within a week, Gerald filed for annulment, fraud as the cause. With DNA evidence and proof of deception about paternity, the case moved fast. Vera tried to fight, but her lawyer must have explained the futility. The hardest part, though, was watching Gerald say goodbye to Owen. He had loved that child regardless of blood. Biology doesn't erase the bond of long nights, feedings, first words. I keep thinking I should hate him, Gerald admitted to me during one of our new weekly dinners. He's proof of how completely I was fooled. But when I look at him, You see an innocent child, I finished quietly. A baby who didn't choose any of this. Exactly, Gerald said. Craig Holbrook arrived from Boise less than 3 weeks after my revelation, and I expected resentment, maybe dislike. This was the man at the center of it all. But he turned out exactly as Helen described, a decent man who had been searching for his lost child and the woman he once loved. His first meeting with Gerald was awkward, but civil. Two men, both victims of the same deception, trying to navigate the impossible. I need you to know, Craig said, looking Gerald in the eye. I didn't know she was pregnant when she left. If I had, I would have moved heaven and earth to find her. Gerald nodded stiffly. So what are your plans now? I want to be in my son's life, support him financially, emotionally, but I also respect that you've been raising him. I don't want to just rip him away. It was more grace than Vera had ever shown. Eventually, they worked out custody, complicated but fair. Craig took primary custody, relocating to our city to ease Owen's transition. Gerald would have regular visitation until Owen was old enough to understand. Then they'd revisit the arrangement. Vera fought bitterly, but she had no ground to stand on. Fraud, no stable income, a proven pattern of lies. Judges don't look kindly on that. The last I'd heard, Vera had moved back to Tacoma to live with her parents while the legal mess unfolded. Philip and Dorothy turned out to be far less forgiving than I'd expected from people who once seemed so protective. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, Gerald was coming for dinner, our first real evening together in over a year. No Vera monitoring every word, no tension about whether I belonged in my own son's life, no tiptoeing around lies. The doorbell rang at 6 sharp. Gerald had always been punctual. Something smells amazing, he said as I opened the door, and for a moment he was just my boy again, the kid who never met a dinner roll he didn't love. They're almost ready, I said, stepping aside. How was your week? It felt so normal, the kind of question I'd longed to ask without intruding on his carefully walled-off life. Actually, pretty good, he said, sitting at his old spot at the table. I had lunch with Craig and Owen yesterday. I hesitated, pulling the rolls from the oven. It was still strange to picture Gerald spending time with the man who'd unknowingly replaced him. How's Owen? Good. Really good. Craig's great with him. Patient with me, too. He lets me be part of things, even though he doesn't have to. I set the basket of rolls down and sat opposite my son. That must be complicated. Gerald buttered a roll with the same careful precision he'd used as a boy. It is. Some mornings I still wake up thinking Owen needs me. Then I remember he's not. I'm not. He trailed off. You're not his father, I said gently, but for a year you were everything a father should be. That love wasn't wasted. It just shifted. He looked up, eyes so much like his father's. Is that what happened to you when Dad left? Did you just redirect your love? The question caught me off guard. We'd never spoken honestly about his father's abandonment. In a way, yes. All that love went into raising you. I'm sorry, Gerald said suddenly, for how I treated you, for laughing at that garbage can stunt, for choosing her story over yours. Tears stung my eyes. You fell in love. People do foolish things when they're in love. Trust me, I know. But you're my father. I should have protected you, not joined in humiliating you. You were protecting what you thought was your family. I understand. He reached across the table and took my hand. You saved me. If you hadn't discovered the truth, how long would it have gone on? Would I have spent years raising another man's child? I don't know, I said, but Owen deserves his real father. Craig deserves his son. And you deserve to build your life on truth, not lies. Even when it hurts? Especially then. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind I'd forgotten we could share. After dinner, Gerald helped me clear the table and wash dishes, slipping back into old rhythms as if the past year hadn't happened. I've been thinking about dating again, he said as we finished. Not seriously yet, but eventually. That's healthy, I said, hanging the dish towel. You're young. You have so much to offer. This time I'll do things differently, slower. Ask more questions. Maybe introduce them to my very smart father with good instincts. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Your very smart father, who's also learned a thing or two about speaking up when something feels wrong. Good, Gerald said, hugging me tight. I need someone who'll tell me the truth, even when it's hard to hear. After he left, I sat with a cup of tea, thinking about the strange road that had brought us here. 6 months ago, I'd been the unwanted parent left by a garbage can while my family laughed. Tonight, I was simply Gerald's father again, trusted, heard, valued. The truth had been devastating at first. Marriages had ended, families split, and a child had been caught in the middle of lies he never asked for. But for me, the truth had been freeing. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending cruelty was just a joke. No more letting anyone treat me as less than I am. My phone buzzed. A message from Craig, Owen crossing a playground, taking steady steps among other kids. The text read simply, "Thought you'd like to see how steady he's getting." I smiled, staring at the boy who wasn't my blood but would always hold a place in my heart. Arms outstretched, face lit with joy, he was learning to walk free of the lies that had marked his early life. And in my own way, so was I. I texted back, "He looks happy and healthy. Thank you for including me." Craig replied almost instantly, "You're the one who made this possible. We'll always be grateful." Real family, I thought. Not the false one built on deception, but the messy, honest kind that comes from truth. I set my phone aside, picked up my book, and sank into my chair. Tomorrow I'd go to work at the library, maybe call an old friend, maybe stop by the farmer's market. Simple things, mine to choose, without worrying about anyone else's approval. The truth had hurt, but it had set us all free. For the first time in over a year, I felt firmly in my own life, valued, respected, loved, without needing to shrink myself. Not all victories are loud. Sometimes the greatest triumph is quiet, the knowledge that you chose dignity over lies, truth over convenience, courage over comfort. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.